GMB viewers, switch off, as Adil Ray sparks bias row with livid Nigel Farage rant. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has wiped out Keir Starmer's lead in the polls. Good Morning Britain's Adil Ray expressed his bemusement at the news that Reform UK leader Nigel Farage appears to be on track to become Prime Minister according to recent polls. He finally wiped out Keir Starmer's lead. Until recently, Starmer has always come out on top in the head-to-head comparison between him and the Reform UK leader. However, an Ipsos Mori poll found that as of September 2025, voters believe Sir Keir and Mr. Farage are now tied on 30% when asked, which of the following, if either, do you think would make a better Prime Minister? The result signals a major shift in just 2 months. The last time the question was asked, in July 2025, Sir Keir had an 8-point lead over Mr. Farage, on 33% to 25% respectively. I mean, this is extraordinary. People were asked the question, who would you vote for? And just in the recent weeks, Nigel Farage has talked about mass deportations. Wasn't clear enough on whether paracetamol has contributed to autism. He couldn't rule that out. Then comes out with this bizarre thing that some people are eating swans. These are ridiculous things he comes out with. He says that Sharia law does exist with some people in the country, and he's evidence of that from a taxi driver in Buckingham who told him. These are quite ridiculous, quacky things that he's coming out with. Yet he leads the polls. Why is that? What's going on? Ray asked. Viewers were not impressed by Ray's remarks and took to X to share their feelings. Yo GMB, journalism is supposed to be impartial, a way of presenting unpolluted facts for the public to consume and make up their minds. Is there anyone more insufferable than Adil Ray? One wrote. At GMB, a majority of your viewers do not gravitate towards Adil Ray. His continual rhetoric to diminish other people's views that do not reflect his own, whilst elevating the racist treatment towards Muslims. Adil incites division, ridicules others, and offers no factual evidence, another added. A third chimed in, that statement you made there is exactly what the problem is. If you don't understand what's going on, how can you call things ridiculous and quaky? Drop your mainstream media narrative and start listening to real people. Aren't you meant to report the news rather than take political sides? Nigel is coming, get over it, a fourth penned. Adil race baiting Ray has to go there every single time. He just can't help himself, nasty man, a fifth opined. Meanwhile, a sixth didn't support Farage but was also incensed by Ray's statement. 2. Adil Ray should be removed from presenting. He is so pro-Muslim he can't resist making his own views known, and isn't impartial. As far as Farage is concerned, heaven help us if he ever became Prime Minister. Pure Trumpism. It was another fiery morning on the Good Morning Britain sofa, but this time the spark turned into a full-blown firestorm. Adil Ray, never one to shy away from political confrontation, found himself at the center of a viewer revolt after a heated exchange with Nigel Farage that spiraled into accusations of bias, grandstanding, and, ultimately, an exodus of angry viewers reaching for the remote. The morning debate had been billed as a routine segment, an update on Britain's post-Brexit economic challenges, rising immigration figures, and the government's ongoing struggles to deliver on their promises. But when Nigel Farage appeared on screen, the energy in the studio shifted. Farage, forever the lightning rod of British politics, has always thrived on confrontation. Yet even he seemed taken aback by the ferocity of Adil Ray's opening salvo. Ray, sitting forward in his chair, accused Farage of peddling fear and division for decades, before launching into a rapid-fire critique of his legacy. You stood there and told the British public that leaving the EU would mean more money for the NHS, Ray said, his tone sharpened by frustration. Instead, we're left with economic stagnation, a divided country, and a government scrambling for answers it doesn't have. Isn't it time you admitted responsibility for the mess you created? Farage, his face reddening on screen, chuckled dryly. Typical of the liberal media, he snapped back. You never wanted Brexit to succeed. You've undermined it at every step. I don't need a lecture from you, Adil, about what the people voted for. They voted for freedom, and I delivered it. The clash was instant, the temperature in the studio rising with each traded barb. Susanna Reid, sitting uncomfortably between the two men, attempted to mediate, but her efforts were drowned out by the sheer force of their argument. Viewers at home, however, didn't appear to share Ray's enthusiasm for confrontation. Social media lit up with frustration, many accusing Ray of bias, others of bullying, and still more lamenting the lack of balanced debate. Adil Ray has lost the plot, one viewer wrote on X, formerly Twitter. He's supposed to be a presenter, not a political activist. If I wanted a rant, I'd listen to talk radio. Another fumed. This is why people don't trust mainstream media. Farage deserves tough questions, but this was an ambush. Switching off. It wasn't just online fury. Reports began to emerge of a significant dip in viewership during the segment, with hundreds claiming they changed the channel as the argument dragged on. GMB's producers, who have long relied on fiery debates to drive headlines, suddenly faced accusations of turning the program into a partisan shouting match. Ray, however, seemed unrepentant. Leaning forward, he doubled down. Nigel, the truth is, you've never had to live with the consequences of your politics. You jet off to America, to Fox News, to your radio shows, while working people in Britain suffer. Don't sit there and tell me you're some kind of savior. Farage shot back, his voice rising. And don't you sit there pretending you represent ordinary people. You're part of the very elite that despises them. You speak down to them, you mock their choices, and then you dare to act like the moral authority. People like you, Adil, are the reason distrust in the media is sky high. At this point, Susanna Reid raised her hands in exasperation. Gentlemen, please, she interjected, but neither man seemed prepared to back down. The exchange stretched on, 10 minutes of near-constant interruptions, accusations, and incredulous gasps from the audience in the studio. For some, it was electrifying television. For others, it was the final straw in what they see as GMB's descent into political theater. One caller on LBC later that morning claimed, I used to watch GMB for news. Now it's just about creating viral clips. Adil Ray isn't impartial. He's campaigning live on air. Another defender, however, praised Ray's tenacity. Finally someone told Farage the truth to his face. For too long he's gotten away with spinning lies. Adil held him accountable. That's journalism. The divide was clear. Viewers were split not just on the argument itself, but on the role of television presenters in modern broadcasting. Should they challenge politicians robustly, or should they remain neutral referees in the debate? By midday, #SwitchOffGMB was trending, with thousands declaring their frustration. Memes of Ray wagging his finger at Farage circulated, alongside clips of Reid's exasperated expressions. Meanwhile, Farage wasted no time capitalizing on the moment, appearing on GB News later in the day to rail against the intolerant woke mob at ITV. Adil Ray wants to lecture me? Fine, Farage told his own audience. But people at home saw through it. They're sick of being talked down to. That's why they're switching off in droves. GMB has lost touch with ordinary Britain. Ray, however, hit back on his own social media platforms. If telling the truth is bias, then I'm guilty, he wrote. We owe it to viewers to call out lies, not normalize them. If you want balance without honesty, you won't find it here. The fallout left ITV scrambling. Privately, insiders admitted the segment went further than expected, with one producer suggesting the argument had overshadowed the rest of the program. Yet others insisted it was exactly the kind of headline-grabbing moment that kept GMB relevant in a crowded news landscape. Critics, however, were less forgiving. Media analyst Claire Moffat noted, GMB has built a reputation on controversy. But when the presenter becomes the story, you have a problem. Audiences want rigorous debate, not a shouting contest. Still, the question lingered. Had Adil Ray overstepped, or had he simply done what many journalists are too afraid to do? Challenge a political heavyweight directly and unapologetically? As the dust settled, one thing was clear. The row had cemented itself as one of GMB's most divisive moments in recent memory. Whether it marked a new chapter of boldness for the show or the beginning of a backlash that could damage its credibility remained to be seen. In living rooms across Britain, though, the verdict was already being delivered by the only people who truly matter, the viewers. Some switched off in disgust, others leaned in, transfixed by the chaos. And perhaps in the end, that was the real goal. Not consensus, not clarity, but controversy. Because in the world of breakfast television, outrage is the currency. And on that front, Adil Ray had certainly delivered.